Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name's Rebecca, I'm 44 years old and I used to suffer from multiple sclerosis, but I no longer experience any of the symptoms since starting the carnivore diet a year and a half ago. In today's video, I wanted to cover what I consider to be the 6 pillars of healing. And by pillars, I mean if these things are left unaddressed, you can't heal fully. And I did actually already just sit and talk to the camera for 40 minutes and then the battery died, and then when I went to change the battery I actually ejected the memory card instead of the battery and I lost the entire thing. So now I am recording it all over again. I'm a little bit tired of talking and of hearing my own voice, so I'm just going to do it as concisely as possible. But I did also just want to give you the sad piece of news that in the past week, not only have I lost 3 chickens because of Stanley, my dog Stanley has killed 3 chickens, but also I lost one of the cats. Very sadly, one of the ginger kittens was killed on the road below my house. So it's been a sad week. He had a short life, but at least it was a happy one. So yeah, and it would have been a quick death. So yes. So anyway, the 6 pillars of healing. So the pillars are, in no particular order: diet, environment, relationships, movement and exercise, rest and recovery, and spirituality or purpose or mindset. I'm going to cover them in the order in which I became aware of their importance. So for me, that was rest and recovery. That was the first thing I became aware of. And that might seem like a really obvious thing, like when you've been through a neurological event or a trauma or whatever it might be that you're healing from, it might be obvious that rest and recovery is needed. However, it wasn't obvious to me because I was one of those people who were really high energy, high achieving, and I never stopped. And I realized that I'd kind of become indoctrinated into this very fast pace and this sense of almost guilt and anxiety if I wasn't being active, if I wasn't being productive and producing something. And although my body 100% was telling me, screaming at me in the face, you need to rest, you need to recover, something in me was fighting against that and not allowing me to. And the rest and recovery is not just physical, it's also your nervous system, your stress management, all of that. So that wasn't helping at all, having this kind of castigating voice. No, you can't just lie down on the sofa all day. So that's why it was something that I became aware of and had to embrace, sink into. I don't like the phrase lean into that everybody uses, but I would say sink into. And if you have ever experienced post-exertional malaise, you'll know that if you try to exert yourself at all, the physical payback is absolutely massive, completely exaggerated and very long lasting. And so I learned very, very quickly that I had this kind of straitjacket around me, and that was the nature of the disability that I had. So I might be able to walk to the shops, but I would then be on the sofa for the rest of the day. And so although I looked like a not disabled person, people wouldn't see the after effect of me having exerted myself. And so it was very hard to explain to people why I was struggling with a disability when it wasn't visible. But that taught me very early on that I had to respect my body and that I had no choice in the matter. So rest and recovery became something I had to train myself into. Some of the things I did were I would now started taking baths, long baths with magnesium salts and like lavender bath oil and things like that, and I would be in the bath for an hour or so. I needed water, actually. I also bought a hammock, so I started spending time in the hammock, and that helped because I almost felt like when I had fatigue that my center of gravity was off. It was like further below my body. There was like a magnetic pull downwards below my body that would throw me off balance. Really hard to explain, but being suspended in a hammock helped with that feeling. It was like I couldn't sink deep enough into rest and recovery, so I needed to be suspended, whether in water or in the hammock. Hard feeling to explain, but yeah, I came to realize that I had to prioritize rest and recovery. I had to allow myself that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be productive the next day. So that's something I would say is a pillar. And that's true whether you have a physical illness or whether you have some kind of trauma. You have to give yourself the grace to rest and recover. It's not being lazy. It's not facing your responsibilities. If people allow you to think that that's what it is, don't listen to them. It's very hard in a capitalist society to be taken seriously if you are resting and recovering all the time. But if that's what you need, that's what you need. And to me, it was an absolute pillar. And I would maintain that now. Even though I'm much more productive now, I will give myself days off. I will give myself days of rest. And that only means that I become more productive over the next week. It gives your brain time to recover as well. Yes, so that's the first one, rest and recovery. The other thing that I became aware of pretty quickly is that on the other side of the coin to that was movement and exercise. So it's like a fine balance between the two. You obviously can't spend your whole time resting and recovering, or your muscles will waste away and your stamina will go away, and that's no good. Your body does need exercise. But when you're obviously dealing with a chronic illness, that has to be gentle exercise. It has to be moderate exercise. So if you have post-exertional malaise, you'll know that you can't just push through it without that huge fatigue payback. So yeah, that was something I learned, but I also couldn't give in to the rest and recovery, the pull towards being extremely tired and needing to lie down all day. I couldn't give in to that. I had to force myself to move, and not just physically, but mentally as well. So some of the things I did to make sure that I didn't completely stop was I got a dog. This one. I got the puppy because I got Yasmin partly because I needed like a nice distraction from the horror of suddenly going down with an incurable neurological degenerative disease, but also because I knew that she would need to be walked, and that was because that was a responsibility I had. I wouldn't be able to just ignore that responsibility. And it would also give me a chance to meet people, other dog walkers. That was the best thing I ever did, like hands down. I owe everything to that little dog. I wouldn't still be here if it wasn't for her. And it was just gentle exercise because I didn't have to go very far to walk her. There was a park around the corner from my house when I lived in the city in Birmingham in England. Even that sometimes was too much for me because of how ill I was. But it was a really huge part of staying sane and keeping up an element of activity. So the other thing I did was I wrote a novel. Having gone from just writing a PhD, I couldn't now just not be doing anything. And that huge momentum from having been studying at doctoral level and kind of going into an academic career, I needed something to do with that momentum, that suddenly I hit a brick wall. And I also just felt like I can't just exist. My life has to be for something. So I took this on, which in comparison to a PhD felt very gentle. It felt like very gentle mental exercise, but it took me 5 years to write it. So I was literally just writing a few paragraphs a day, if that. And over the course of 5 years, it gradually got written. I also wrote a few short stories and they were actually published. I do feel really proud of myself for having achieved those things. And now that I have the experience of writing one novel, I'm now halfway through writing a second novel. So I do feel like those years weren't for nothing, and that was because something in me needed to keep up some level of cognitive, cerebral movement. Another thing that I do, which is very light, because when you have brain fog and you have fatigue, it's actually really, really hard to think straight. You could end up just staring at a screen all day, and that's no good. Reading is a really good, if you can manage to read something, not anything taxing, just reading for pleasure is obviously also a really good activity. So reading and writing were my things, but I always used to do that anyway, so it kind of came naturally. But something really light that you can do to keep your brain moving is games. So for example, every morning when I wake up, I do Wordle, the New York Times games. I do Wordle, and I do like 5 other ones as well. Connections, Strands, Tiles, Letterboxd, sometimes the mini crossword, and I just go, there's only one per day of each, so it's just a really nice way to wake up and just be doing something with your brain. So yeah, I would advocate movement and exercise, but as I say, not just physical, but also cognitive, to just keep yourself from rusting over and seizing up, you know, but keep it light and balance it with rest and recovery. So those things I addressed quite early on, but I think the next thing that I came across that was really important, that came as a real surprise to me, was the pillar of environment. I hadn't been aware of this at all until the day that I discovered that I'd become electrosensitive as part of my illness. So when you have MS, you become sensitive to absolutely everything, whether that's stress, whether that's heat, whatever it might be. But I couldn't look at lights. You know, the pain in my eyes when I looked at lights was unbearable. So I became light sensitive as well. But then one day I just joined the dots and realized that I'd become Wi-Fi sensitive. And I set about reducing my exposure. I went to a wired connection. I stopped putting my mobile phone against my head. I never do that to this day. Everything's always on loudspeaker. And I stopped putting my laptop on my legs because I realized it was causing me terrible leg pains. It was almost like I thought these devices were invisible before, because that's what you might be led to believe. But then they're not. They are emitting radiation. And whether you believe that radiation's harmful or not, you know, it's indisputable that they do emit radiation. And I became sensitive to it. So I had my first upturn in health when I realized that. People don't like to hear that. They dismiss that element of my health journey. I'm completely used to people reacting defensively, even angrily, when I suggest that, or mocking me. But that's what I experienced in my body. I know a lot of people on this channel have actually expressed similar, so I know that I'm in good company to be expressing this. And that was the reason why I moved to the mountain in Spain. I realized that I needed to get out of the city, because I was in the second biggest city in England and surrounded by cell phone towers and Wi-Fi routers and mobile phones and cell phones. And so I was just like, well, I can't stay here then, can I? But not just that, there was pollution, whether that's, you know, fumes from traffic or noise pollution, and just the environment of being in the city, which is so like, you know, flashing lights and adverts, commercial kind of pressure to buy everything. There's just the constant messages. A very hostile environment when you become sensitive to it. And I realized that what I really needed was to be in the middle of nature, and also in a warm country, because England, the weather in England, it's unacceptable. If you're English, you'll know what I mean. It's, you know, it's not just the stereotype of it rains all the time. It's got a whole lot worse in the past 10 years. It's ridiculous. And I was like, I'm not accepting this. And then Brexit was happening. So I was like, well, if I'm going to leave, I'm going to have to leave right now. And I went to Spain, where it's warmer. I went to the north of Spain, actually, because the south of Spain, because of my heat intolerance due to MS, I couldn't live in the south. So I decided to move to the north, where there's mountains, where it's green, but it's still warmer than England. And it really is, for me, the perfect environment. So I am now very happily living in Asturias. I actually spent 4 years on a mountaintop in a mountain cabin in Asturias. And that was where I started to get back some of my stamina, and I came some way along the road to healing while I was on that mountain. So I think environment is extremely important. I would advocate, if you become sensitive to your environment and you realize that it's not helping you in whatever way, then I would say, you know, even if you just go to the countryside for a day trip, you know, do it. Be in nature, be in an environment that is healthy for the human body as much as you can, as much as possible, in whatever way that means to you. So for me, that was a huge part of it. And also in terms of your environment, even if you are, you know, stuck in the environment you're in, you can manage your like blue light exposure. You can manage, you know, the LED lights, all the kind of harshness of the modern world. You can influence your environment. You can have softer lighting, you can light incense, you know, whatever it might be that makes your environment, your immediate environment, feel more healing. I think it's extremely important and something to pay attention to. So where have we got to? Rest and recovery, movement and exercise, environment. So it was at this point that I became aware of the importance of diet. So I did actually start to follow a particular diet when I first got sick, but I didn't understand that it was a pillar of healing at that point. I didn't understand its importance. I saw it more as a kind of psychological tool to give me a sense of control. And it just so happened that the diet I chose was the OMS diet, Overcoming Multiple Sclerosis, which was sort of vegan, but more strict than vegan because it ruled out all saturated fat. So that meant I couldn't just have processed vegan food. It was all whole foods, which obviously is healthier than a standard American diet, as they call it. But also it did include fish. So it was specific to having MS. And I followed that diet for a couple of years. I enjoyed it. It was definitely an improvement on my previous diet, simply because it eliminated processed foods. And it made me more creative in terms of what I was cooking. But it didn't help me. It helped me. I looked better. My skin was better. I lost a little bit of weight. Not that I was overweight, but still. But I did not feel better. I didn't feel stronger. I didn't feel less ill at all. In fact, I was at my most ill when I was on that diet. I don't think it made me ill, but I don't think it helped me to heal. So I didn't understand the importance of diet. And actually, when I moved to the mountain, I let it go completely. I just went straight back to what was easiest, living in a new country where vegan food wasn't so widely available. And getting to the supermarket was now a bit of a hassle because it involved going down a mountain. And I just let it go. And it was all frozen pizzas, chocolate, cakes, pasta. And then I started to get bloated, and I didn't understand why I was still really fatigued, even though I'd addressed my environment and all that. So anyway, and then I came across the carnivore diet. Probably not necessary to talk about this too much because this is what I talk about all the time on my channel. But I came across carnivore and I realized that I had been neglecting diet, and that this was the right diet, and that this was suddenly a whole different experience of healing. I got my core strength back, I got my brain capacity back, my memory, my energy, all of it. And it was still a process of believing in my stamina, I suppose, and getting my confidence as a carnivore back. But that's an absolute pillar. And like I say, I don't want to linger too long on this topic because my entire channel is about this, and there's plenty of other videos where I go into this. But the carnivore diet completely set me from survival mode into the thick of life again, and I could talk about it all day. Yeah, diet has to be addressed. I came to realize that diet has to be addressed. You can't leave it neglected. It's so important because we're physical creatures and we can't pretend that we're not. Our bodies respond to whatever situation it's in and whatever fuel it's being filled with. So yeah, diet's absolutely huge, and I personally would advocate the carnivore diet for anybody with a chronic illness. Although, I can't tell people what to do, I would always say, look, just know that this is an option. It's worth a shot, it's worth a try, see if it works for you, because it's been nothing short of miraculous for me. So diet is up there with the pillars, 100%. And it was after my carnivore diet epiphany, that's when I became aware of the importance of relationships. I'd kind of already been aware because, and I don't want to talk about this topic for too long at all because it's, for me, the most painful topic, the most difficult one to talk about. But relationships, if you don't have supportive, healthy relationships in your life, I don't think you can hope to heal. And to keep it short, when I was at my most ill and I was in England, the learning experience I had about relationships was that I couldn't be alone. I felt very abandoned. 99% of the people in my life walked away when I got sick, and not because I'd become particularly needy or difficult. They just weren't interested, and I couldn't keep up with them anymore, and so they just seemed to just all drop away. And I've heard that this is a very common experience for sick people, and it was one of the hardest things to come to terms with. That was partly why I moved to the mountain. I thought, well, what difference does it make if I'm up a mountain? I'm alone anyway. So I moved up the mountain. Then it was the pandemic. So then that experience of being isolated just got dragged out even further. Obviously, everybody experienced that to a greater or lesser degree during the pandemic. But yeah, it was just like so many years of feeling isolated from the human race and alone. And I learnt that lesson that we're not supposed to be alone as humans. We're supposed to be surrounded by our tribe. But then once I moved to Spain, I thought, well, don't be picky then about who you let into your life. I remember having conversations with myself about this. Just be friends with people. If they're coming smiling and they're saying nice things, let them into your life, because you can't afford to be picky. You just need friends. And that was really stupid. That was really stupid. And I learnt a very hard lesson that just because people come smiling, that doesn't mean you can trust them. That doesn't mean you should let them into your life. So again, I don't want to dwell on this at all. I've talked about it in previous videos. But I would say that although I see a great importance in not isolating yourself and not being alone, if you are alone, I think it's important to maybe join a club or find ways in which you can be around other people. At the same time, don't make the mistake I did of letting your boundaries down. It's much harder to assert boundaries when you're structurally weakened. So don't allow, I think just be very wary. Don't allow your loneliness to turn into naivety. The people you let into your life should be people who are supportive of your health journey. And if they're not, if somebody is not supportive of your health journey, don't waste any time in cutting them out, because it will only get worse. And so, yeah, I don't want to dwell on that, but I think I've just learnt this kind of very hard lesson of going from one extreme to the other, having nobody in my life and then having too many toxic relationships in my life. And I've just been like, and now I've come out and I've found my tribe. I know who my tribe is, and you know, I'm so grateful for that. And I've reached a place where my relationships are healthy and I do feel supported and I do feel loved and I don't feel alone. So that's a wonderful place to be, and I would say that's been a huge part of my healing journey. And then finally, spirituality, purpose, mindset. So this is really important, although I think it takes a different form depending on your beliefs and depending on your stage of life, perhaps. I've always been quite a spiritually open person. I've always sort of followed a spiritual path of my own, and lots of people on my channel, when they're sending their well wishes, they often say, turn to Jesus Christ and he'll help you. And I thank you. I fully respect that, and I do take that as positive and loving advice. I do have my own beliefs, and I do think it's really important to maintain some kind of level of spirituality. The reason being, it takes us out of our ego. I think that our biggest weakness as humans is our ego. That's our biggest cause of misery and pain inflicted on other people. And I think that's where spirituality comes in. It takes you beyond that. And I don't know, I don't really want to talk too much about my spiritual beliefs. In whatever way you believe in something transcendental, it's a helpful belief to have. But wrapped up in that is your mindset and your sense of purpose on this earth. So I think it's sometimes very hard to find a sense of purpose and to maintain a healthy mindset when you're in the throes of a chronic illness. But I think it's a pillar of healing. I think that if you don't have some form of coping mechanism or purpose or something that's comforting on a deeper level or a transcendental level, your healing is going to be limited. So again, I don't want to prescribe what that should be. You might just find it helpful to meditate, or you might find it helpful to pray, or you might find your purpose in helping others in some way, or whatever it might be, or creativity, like I said before with my novel. So, and this is where the pillars sometimes overlap with each other as well. They're not necessarily as defined as I've laid them out in this journey, but I think that although I've listed this one last, I was aware of this at the very beginning, and it's been like a constant all the way through. But my purpose that I found now, one of my biggest purposes, has been this YouTube channel, which has come along later. And that really helps me with my mindset and with my sense of purpose. Spreading the word about this healing journey has been an ongoing source of inspiration as I've continued to heal. So I guess that's why I've listed it last. And I think it's time for me to wrap up now, because this is going to be quite a long video otherwise. But there you go. So rest and recovery, movement and exercise, environment, diet, relationships, and spirituality or purpose, mindset. And they are my 6 pillars of healing. And I think each one of these has to be addressed. whatever type of healing journey you're on, they're all as important as each other. And I really hope that if you're out there and you're struggling, you will pay attention to these, and I really hope that in doing so you will start to see improvements and move into a better place, because we all can heal. It's possible, and I believe in you, and I'm just wishing nothing but the best, and I'm hoping that you're all doing great, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye.